Miriam, it's been a minute. We're glad to have you once again. And we are going to, first of all, interesting developments. And this has been taking a very interesting shape from, I think, about July this year up to this moment, where we are seeing that the US has actually, there's so much. We'll dive into that shortly. But I want to first welcome you, gentlemen and lady. Maybe if I could hear from Francis, I want to begin with you intentionally because we're going to look at any coalitions, any possibility of a coalition ahead of the 2026 general elections. But importantly, the major conversation of this today's show is that we are seeing a deal between Uganda and the US, and how that is taking shape, and how President Trump's second administration seems to be about deals, and why, and if we are going to benefit from them. Francis.
Thank you, Lynn, and good morning, good afternoon, our viewers and fellow panelists. Here it is a morning. I'm glad it is not the end for to usher in winter. Back to what you were asking, the I don't know, bilateral in Uganda and US in as far as immigration is concerned. First of all, I would have to say that countries always sign bilateral agreements between one country and the other.
Francis, before we get to that point, I asked if you're still ANT or your PPF. Is it PPF? I don't know. There's that marriage. We want to know, has it been officiated? Are we yet to see celebrations? What's the status?
Lynn, I think there are two things that people confuse.
Right.
There's a difference between collaboration and then merging.
Mm-hmm.
For decades, many Ugandans have been crying foul that why can't all political parties unite and make one front? And we have always said that there is no problem. We can talk to each other. These are different fronts, but with a common enemy. Sometimes with different approaches, which all will work. So, ANT and the People's Front for Freedom Party is not a coalition, it is a collaboration. Because how we are collaborating with also other different political parties. And it's not something that, in my own view, that it is something wrong, because you have seen our leader of our political party is going to attend functions organized by NUP. So I think if people think that political parties collaborating on certain national issues is a problem, then it would mean that as Ugandans, we don't know what we are looking for, or we don't accept that Uganda is fragmented, it's united, and therefore this unity can only be, the conversations of unity can only be orchestrated by the leaders that we have, the leaders in ANT, the leaders in NUP, those who are like-minded, so that we are able to fight a common enemy. Because once all these forces collaborate, which is different from maybe coalitions, or coalitions can come depending on how the collaboration has matured, and then to say, okay, which role is each one of us going to play in as far as fighting a common enemy is concerned. So that's the level at which ANT is. Thank you.
Fantastic. I like that it is a coalition. It's not it's a coming together of minds and trying to forge a way forward. Understood. Kharim and Ntambi, the National Unity Platform recently concluded a convention. I would want to believe that you have insights into it. The last time I checked, actually, which was the last time we had a conversation here, National Unity Platform was seeking about 9 billion shillings, and it was doing rounds around the globe to source for that money. Could you bring us up to speed on how that has gone, or how that is going, and where we are currently? I think he went off a
My
bit.
network is in and out. Can I come in next after I settle in? My
Okay,
network is
noted, noted. All right, Miriam, please. What's happening around you? It's been a minute. We missed you the other show, so let us know what's been cooking around you as we dive into what's happening today.
Thank you, Lynn. I also have a cold like you, so my voice is somewhere. Greetings to my fellow panelists, and I hope you are well. Actually, what's been happening here has not been good. We lost a Ugandan friend, a brother, Agawa Clifford from Kabwohe, Shema. He died in a way which is still, they are yet to tell us. They found him dead in his swimming pool. Could have been an accident, but we don't know yet. So it's been so sad. The last Thursday we had a funeral right this side. He was a family like everyone in Ohio. He was where people gathered for independence celebrations. He was that big brother to everybody. So we are all, mourning him. But apart from that, the politics, I think nothing much is going on. We're just watching to see if the redistricting to give Republicans more seats that has been in Texas will catch up in Ohio, because Ohio is so Republic, and it's been rumors around, the gerrymandering going on. Otherwise, apart from that, nothing much.
Well, thank you for that update. If I could excitedly tell you about tonight in a few hours, we have the quarterfinals of the Chan tournament that is being hosted by the East African community tonight at Nambole. Uganda will face off Senegal, the defending champion. And it is Uganda is the last standing nation after Kenya and Tanzania were eliminated from the Chan tournament. So today is the deciding moment if we proceed to the semifinals. In fact, we have never made it to the semifinals. We just pray that this will be one of those. KCCA has halted HAM's Nashville Channel project amid legal environmental concerns. Recently, President Museveni endorsed the initiative to go ahead and construct and make it a better space for Ugandans, but there's been a few issues have come up. The NRM top organs meeting, that is SEC, and of course, right now as I speak, the National Executive Council is meeting committee is meeting in Entebbe about, of course, as we prepare for the general elections. And the most interesting race in SEC right now is the one between former Speaker of Parliament and now Minister for East African Affairs, that is Honorable Rebecca Kadaga, against the current Speaker, Anita Among, and for the second national vice chairperson. We await to see what will come out of the August 27th, 28th National Delegates Conference and how they will vote against who. So there's that brewing really, really hard. It's pitting those two together, and it's really terrible. But there's worry. Well, we're yet to see what will come out of all those decisions. So they're sitting, and at least, no offense to Noop or and NRM seems to be taking this a little bit seriously than the rest of the parties. I'm just saying. But let's come back to, I see we have been joined by Honorable Simon. Simon, we're good to have you. We're glad to have you today. Thank you for joining us this afternoon here in Kampala. It's good morning in the rest of the US, where most of our colleagues are. Simon, you're very welcome. Maybe you could say hello.
Oh, welcome. Happy to come back and to find the same faces, usual suspects. And I'm told you have lined up a very long order of program. And,
not quite, but it's all right. We shall dive into a few of those.
And you should apologize for keeping African time. You know, we are trying to create as Africa, you know.
Well, I learned timing from Egypt, where astronomy and other things happened. So we're not doing Western things.
Right. We get you. But we're going to add another name to your name.
Which one is that?
Let Kama.
No. I think my dad told me before he passed on was that don't judge before you ask reasons for someone. Right. Because you're not even asking me what had happened, why am I late, and you're already confirming that I'm even labeled a late comer.
Yeah, I'm apologizing for.
And you have not even shared the fact that there's a time you came late and I was already in, all those kind of things.
Anyway, so ladies and gentlemen, Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni held talks with US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and they focused on strengthening cooperation in immigration, trade, and regional security, marking a new phase in efforts to restore ties strained in recent years. During that conversation is where we saw that we're going to be receiving and host actually asylum seekers who have been denied protection in the United States, but and are also unable to safely return home. So we are yet to host those people. I don't know when that is going to start, how it is going to go. One thing this speaks to is that we are seeing that we're trying to maybe forge a way forward between our strained relations with the US. So if I could briefly take us back to about July, the US cut Uganda's visa validity to 3 months. So if you're traveling to the US for business or tourism, you will now receive visas valid for only one entry and a 3-month stay, down from the 2-year multiple entry visas that were previously issued. Then we also saw that the US mission told Ugandans no more giving birth in America for citizenship. And these are actually headlines that were, trending in Uganda and the US. That was not all. It also suspended visa issuance for Burundians. So it is not just Uganda. And so we sat I want to think that Uganda sat and decided to revise its bilateral cooperation between Uganda and the US. So we have reached that point. I want to quickly run into it and ask that I'm tickled to begin with, Honorable Simon, especially because of your international relations background. Are we looking at a foreign policy revised? Are we looking at international relations revised? Are we looking at what are we looking at? Is this because we're seeing that Trump is all about deals? Trump is operating outside international and domestic legal frameworks, a whole lot of design around his recent foreign policy. But what is Uganda seeking to achieve with the latest development?
First of all, I want us to look at this from a broader perspective in terms of calibrating our relationship with the US. You know very well, as you rightly pointed out, that we reached a point when our relationship with the US was dwindling, and that Uganda was seeking alternative sources of markets and also alternative sources of external relations that would help to augment and support our policies and programs. The US reached a point, started narrowing down the space, being ultra critical of human rights issues. Thank God for governance and activist groups. They were being utterly critical of corruption, even if there's a lot of corruption in their backyards and also corruption in other countries where they relate with very well, but are being utterly critical about that. And so that drove Uganda towards other alternatives. And we felt that Washington was not giving us the cooperation that we need. Even if, of course, we do acknowledge certain things that need to be corrected. But there's a difference between asking to correct and also acting as if you are a third province of that country. So we would not want to stomach that. And so that narrowed down. But now there's been some process over time of engagement between Uganda and the US, particularly through Washington and also through New York. And this gave rise to this agreement. People are looking at deportees as if it's the only thing, but it is not just that. It is actually a broader thing to do with cooperation, trade, and so on, in which we want to ensure that first, and I want to agree with you that we want to pitch our cooperation and diplomacy. The deal showcases cooperation between Kampala and Washington, and it includes many things of trade and also includes migration management as part of Trump administration's broader strategy to expand deportation partnerships. And I want to say that this does not include criminals. It is about those deportees who cannot go back to their countries but need to be settled somewhere. And this is hinged on our tradition of refugee management in this country. And some of you may recall that about 8 years ago or 10, the United Nations refugee program lifted literally everything about our refugee management policy and made it an AU one, and therefore pitched cooperation between the AU and the UN over that, where the refugees needed to be treated a little differently. Because some countries treat refugees very harshly. When you're in such countries, you are encamped, and then you're not allowed to integrate with the nationals. You can never take on a task, a job, or even trade. For us here, we're a little more relaxed. As long as you're documented, you can, and you're monitored, you're allowed to undertake certain livelihood activities, which makes the refugee more productive and contribute to the national economy of the host country. So that's an area. And Uganda's strategic interest, in my view, is, I would suggest that Uganda is seeking to better trade deals and also to aim at being in good books with President Trump. Remember, we've had serious challenges with the tariffs. We've had serious challenges with even AGOA and so on. So we expect that the new arrangement is going to accommodate a number of those areas and to ensure that we boost our exports. And that's how we can enhance the value of our currency, boost on employment opportunities, and therefore be able to boost on the income of our countries. The issue of human rights, yes, there are people who raise concerns about human rights issues, potential risks of deportees, in our countries, especially a country who some people still categorize as fragile protections or questionable human rights records. But I want to say that, yes, we've had refugees and huge numbers for a long time now. And we've not had any challenges with refugees bordering on human rights abuses and so on, because they don't have a right into our matters. We deal with the Miriam as a national because she has a claim on her rights about the issues of human rights in this country. But a refugee, they have to know where they stop. We don't want to bring them into our national politics and so on. So yes, such categories are there. So me as an IR student, I think that US is just trying to enhance the issues of managing migration flows through bilateral agreements. Because remember, this did not start with Trump. It started much earlier. Even with people like Obama, they were really massaging this. And now Trump has perfected it and come up with concrete actions. And I think that's what is happening. And then for Uganda, I think it impacts positively in relations and also with other countries on similar cases. But also it makes Uganda stand out on matters of migration and matters of movement. Because, you know, this is a huge issue across the globe. If you look at Africans going to Europe illegally, and also Africans going to Americas, and others Africans go to the Middle East and also Far East. So this is something that we need to brace ourselves about. I'm not sure the policy related to such mass movements as Uganda and whether we have it at the AU, but I have seen some reactions about the treatment of Africans in frontier countries like Libya and so on, where they are turned into slaves and all that. So I think this is part of the developments that we're beginning to see emerge as a phenomenon that we need to shape policies around. To me, it is a positive development because any positive relationship is beneficial as long as it is crafted with mutuality and clear understanding, and no party oppresses the other or undermines the other in the terms and content of the agreement. Back to you.
Right. Thank you, Honorable Simon. Francis, if I could come to you, we see that the U.S. Secretary Rubio, when discussing this, having that conversation with the president, of course, praised Uganda's role as a model of regional stability, citing its peacekeeping contributions in Somalia and the DRC. But it also looks at trade relations, which Honorable Simon has also hinted on, because we're seeing that we lost AGOA. I don't know if that was also, it was a conversation that was had over, of course, of the anti-homosexuality bill. There's so much that has happened. We've been, if we cut off duty-free access for Ugandan exports, coffee, vanilla, fish, textiles, and all that. So do you think this deal comes at the right time, or this conversation comes at the right time? Will we see, because already we see that the issues we had stemmed, most of them, of course, stemmed from the previous electoral cycle, where we saw that we had human rights violations, and of course the US came out and spoke loudly about that. Will this, therefore, change maybe what has been forecast for the 2026 general elections?
Thank you, Lynn, and the other fellow panelists. And to your question, I'll first begin with your last point. Will that change the way how Uganda operates in terms of human rights abuse? The answer is no. Uganda, provided the NRM is still in power, that is their blueprint of how they have chosen to rule Uganda, to ensure that the human rights triumphed on, and nobody should have a right to speak. Now back to the agreement. Because I said at first that there is no problem with the different countries having bilateral agreements with other countries. I have no objection about that. but the spirit in which it is done is what is questionable. For the case of Uganda, if it has also been following the political situation in the US, then they would also first ask, why now? That is something very important. Why now? Why was it not during the past? When Simon is talking about maybe the past regime, which was maybe Democrats, but there were also Republicans before either Biden or before Obama and so on. But why now? And then when it comes to Uganda saying that, okay, we are going to accept them, but we don't, for the US, they have been sounding it over and over that what they are deporting are criminals. So I don't know where Mulongo gets the justification and assurance that for them what they will bring to them are not criminals. I don't know what yardstick they are going to use. That is one. Then when we go to the general UN kind of charter about refugees and so on, number one, it says that another country can accept relocation of refugees. For example, let me call them refugees. For this case, in the US, they are not refugees. To another country, if another country accepts that, number one, they are going to admit them and resettle them permanently. So the question is Uganda going to settle those people permanently? And if yes, I can tell you thousands of people who are in Uganda, they are not settled. Even up as I speak, there are people who are being evicted. Can you first clean that mess before you invite another mess to add in? Is saying that, oh, in Uganda, we allow these refugees, they can come and do business and a living and so on. I have no problem with that. But the question is, are Ugandans themselves settled that they can do business, that if you measure their per capita income, we are somewhere, and therefore we can even bring in other people to tap into those, and then we know that we are developing together. I have no problem with saying that we can assist, but how and why? Now, I do agree that we can have maybe Mulongo talked about it as trade deal. I have no problem with that, but the problem that comes with it is most of those deals, as he's calling them, they are deals for individuals, not deals that benefit the country. And in most cases, you find that such deals are done for, like, the NRM and President Museveni in particular, to entrench themselves into power, not for the good of Ugandans, but for how they preserve themselves into power. Therefore, I would say that there is a way how we can diplomatically deal with other countries, not necessarily through more or less like coercion and without an open and transparent manner. You have seen in most cases where I am aware that other discussions will take place behind closed doors, but such a matter of national importance, it needs that we journalists can be there. They ask questions for the public to know, like what mechanisms and so on. But you see, for Uganda, it is done behind curtains and so on. Maybe like Mulongo at least is privy to the agreement and the content, which I would also say that since I'm also a shareholder in Uganda, if he doesn't mind sharing that document or that agreement, and we also read so that I know how it is going to affect me and how it is going to affect my family and other relatives and like any other Ugandan, because we are all partners, and then we see what are we welcoming into our country. But I think a due process was not followed, and I would just at a simple level, call it that was an arm twisting for Uganda, and because we always fall for simple vibes, then this is another trap to go and add into the chaos that is already in the country. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Francis. Miriam, I come to you. If you recall, I think this was about 2022 before a number of suspicions came forward. Uganda's exports to the US were valued at about 200 million US dollars. And now we are lobbying to renew American investment in agro-processing, oil and gas, infrastructure, sectors seen as central to Uganda's economic transformation. The question here is, really, we've had these relations before. Yes, we've been receiving, some money has been coming through, but will this hold water, or is it another political gimmick?
You mean the resettlement of the deportees? Yes. I think Trump government is so determined to deport so many migrants, and if they are lucky to get a country which is ready to accept them. Remember, there are even other African countries who have rejected these deals, and they also want to trade. The issue is there is like evil behind all this. I'm calling it evil because that's the language Republicans understand. There is an evil intention, bad faith behind all these deportations. And the reason these people are primarily being deported from USA, like Francis said, is because they have criminal records. These are diehard criminals. So Uganda is opening the borders to diehard criminals, and like Simon said, and also denied, these people are going to be settled permanently in Uganda. That's the plan. And Simon denied that these are not criminals, but trust you, there is nobody being deported right now who is not a criminal that is not being sent to their original country. These people are not sent to their original countries for a reason. And what is that reason? And why is Uganda accepting rejected people? I mean, we stand on the platform of human rights, Pan-Africanism, and all that. But why don't you consider the rights of these people? These are human beings. They have original countries. They have their families. Most of them actually have families back in USA, and that's why they are in USA. But they also have families in their original countries. But because the process of deporting them and taking to their original countries is not handled well, I think that transaction doesn't materialize, and that's why they are looking for their third destination. And Uganda is openly opening up, and I think there is an exchange of money. I have no evidence to that effect, but if you look at this project was once conducted by UK. UK wanted to deport people to Rwanda, so that was exchange of a lot of money. They built facilities and all that where they would detain these people. And for that process, it was structured actually, which is much better than the Uganda situation. It was structured. They had facilities where to settle the people, which is not the case in Uganda. So right now, I don't know where they are going to settle them. Are you going to put them in hotels? Are you going to rent houses for them? Are you going to put them in refugee camps? In which case, that would be UNHCR process. So where are you going to put them? Are you taking them to Rizira prison? Because these are diehard criminals. Right now, Uganda has no infrastructure or excessive infrastructure to put people, like everybody said. We have an overflow of refugees from neighborhood countries. People who want shelter from DRC, from Sudan, from Rwanda and other countries. So we are overloaded already with that refugee thing to accept other additional burden. And especially this burden, which looks somehow special and different from the rest of the refugees, and they are not under UNHCR, so we don't have that support from the international bodies to assist them resettle. So it's it's kind of like a poisoned chalice, and I don't know if really that's what we should be going for. We can negotiate trade. Like you said, we lost AGOA. Yeah, that was a big loss, but it was for a reason. And if that reason was about LGBTI, and we know this current government doesn't mind about it, so why can't they reinstate AGOA without any conditionalities? And except that Simon is not telling us that the issue of human rights actually goes deeper. It's about abuse of human rights on a political level. It's not about LGBTI that Uganda lost AGOA. So we are compromising. We are like we're running out of choices. So we are that dumping ground because we can't do better, and that's a shame. Otherwise, if it was for trade, we can negotiate trade like other countries. We can negotiate trade based on our comparative advantage. We have resources which America wants, and we sell them, and we get and we also buy from them what we don't want. That's how people negotiate trade. You don't negotiate trade by selling other humans. Actually, we call these deportee deals are generally called slave handling deals. It's like these people don't want to be in Uganda. First of all, they don't want to be anywhere apart from their countries. So you're accepting people even against their own will. And how are you sure that these people, when they reach in Uganda, they want to stay there anyway? And how are you going to hold them? Are you going to put holding posts? Are you going to put their security and all that to keep them there? So it's all funny, it's weird, it's not Pan-African, and let's not call it that. It's against the human rights of individuals. It's against the general human rights and dignity of every citizen. Nobody would want to be resettled, to be dumped in a country they don't know nothing about. They don't know your language, they don't know everything. For instance, there is a case of this guy who was deported to Venezuela. Let's see, what is his name? He was deported to Venezuela, but Venezuela, they said he can't stay there. So they now want to send him to Uganda. This is a person who was separated from his family. He has a criminal record, but that's not as big as it should be. I think they just want to deport him because they want to deport him. They want many numbers of deportees to fill their quotas. So they are dumping him to Uganda. And I mean, look at that man, look at his family. Is that what you call Pan-Africanism? Is that what it is? Because first and foremost, Pan-African stands for Ubuntu, stands for human dignity, storing human relations, and this doesn't sound like it. And let's do proper deals. I know Uganda is so compromised because of the legitimacy of the regime. We have so many that going on as far as human rights are concerned. We are kidnapping opposition, we are rigging elections, and we are doing all that. And even Seven has needs something to secure his shaky regime. But we can do better than this.
Indeed, we can do better than this, but how is also a big question. Kharim, we're glad to know your network has come to order. Before you dive into this, you could hint on what the NIP convention is doing and how it went and how your plans for 2026 are coming along. But also this deal, rights activists are saying it could make the US administration more favorably inclined towards Uganda, but at the expense of those deported. And if I could quote human rights lawyer Nicholas Opio, he says the deal runs afoul of international law. It leaves the legal status of deportees unclear, which Miriam was hinting on, and we are sacrificing human beings for political expediency.
Thank you so much, Lynn, and the panelists. Sorry about the delay. First of all, I wanted to to talk about our convention. This has been the sixth time that we have gathered in the diaspora. To give a brief background, we started the convention in commemoration of August 13th, when the party president and other people had been rounded off and beaten in Arua. So the first event that we had was in 2019, and we had called that the Patriots Retreat. So the event started evolving, and in 2021, we initially started the convention. So we have been about now 6 years running, and this was a very successful event. Gearing up to the 2026 elections, we had a very good turnout. We are still continuing the fundraising, the fundraising drive for the diaspora to make sure that we hit the expectation of our party and our leaders in Uganda. We also managed to come up with a few resolutions that we wanted, our party to consider in our policy platform or manifesto that, there will be putting out very soon. So I would not really want to put the cat before the horse and go into the specifics of that. But soon our party will be giving you and the details of everything that came from Boston. Now coming to the supposed deal, I am afraid I wouldn't want to give this conversation the validity that equates to a deal, and it's unfortunate that when the honorable was talking about it, he called it a deal. It is not on paper. It is just talk. We have had these talks before. The new administration here has been talking about deals with everyone, but those deals, if you Google them, there is no actual pen to paper that has been signed to this agreement. I had the honorable talking about some of the specifics. We've had this before. First of all, Uganda being a partner in security with the US, that's a tired talking point that we've been having since the early 2000s. And when we keep saying that, it is at the expense of Ugandans who have endured the brutal regime and its human rights abuse record. So to call it a deal of getting back into the good terms with the US, it's good for the optics, but for sure there is no deal. I'm going to remind you, in 2021, after the brutal elections in Uganda, Uganda jumped onto another ship. They were like, okay, the US is looking for countries that can host refugees from Afghanistan. Oh, Uganda was like, oh, we are ready to welcome them. We are going to be the host. If the US is paying, we shall be hosting them. But due to public outcry, the US really didn't follow through with this deal. To an extent that the government of Uganda would have to go to Afghanistan and pick up a few people. I don't know whether it was a family or whatever of some Afghanistan people, and brought them in Entebbe. I'm very curious to know where that ended. Where are they? What's the progress? Because I heard they were about 15 people, refugees from Afghanistan that were hosted in Uganda. Did they return? Can we pick up on that? So even if Museveni said, even if the US government today said that they wanted specimen to experiment on Mars, Museveni would be like, here we are. We are ready to give you some people to take. So that has been the kind of relationship when it comes to Museveni covering up. So, like the honorable said, that the human rights record and the relations with the US has been tainted. Of course, this is the best time to hop onto this new administration and try to say we are in good terms. We should work together, because they know their record on the world stage has been surely tainted. What I find very unfortunate is for the Secretary of State to call Uganda and Museveni, a great partner, and we've had several conversations with his office. I remember after the 2021 elections, we had these long conversations with his office. He was on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and I remember one of us foreign affairs advisors. I think she was Bethan Paulos. She was very critical of Uganda, and Marco Rubio himself has been signing up on to the statements that were coming from the Senate Foreign Relations Committee on Uganda's states on human rights, different documents starting way in 2019, 2021. He has been part of that, and for him to make a sea change and say that now Museveni is going to be a darling because he's going to be hosting deportees from the US, which deportees the Honorable is calling investors. They are going to have these refugees come to invest in. I'm trying to imagine where they are going to get the capital from the prison to coming to Uganda and finally be prospective investors. I really find it very unfortunate. However, we should see how it plays out, because every day in Washington there has been a talk of deals, but when you ask for the paper, for the pen and the paper where these documents are, it has all been lip service. And to go back to what Honorable Simon was talking about, that if this deal is to happen, there has to be mutual interest. I'm curious as to what our interest is. What's the leverage? Why are we hosting this? In what are we trading? Are we trading it for lifting sanctions for Anita Among and the likes? Are we trading? What is the trade? What do we get from this? Where is the leverage for Uganda? And I think I can stop there for now. Thank you so much, Lynn.
All right, thank you, Kharim. I understand we have Honorable Simon. I'm sure you need to respond to a couple of comments coming in.
Yes, I want to, because it looks like there's a lot of falsifications, misunderstanding, misinformation, and disinformation, which needs to be clarified. My sister Miriam was asking question. Not first of all, my friend Francis. It's been a while I had not seen Francis. Francis, my good friend. Wow, you look even better these days. Have you been eating more calories? And then who has disappeared again? My friend who has been at the convention. Did he just come to ask questions and leave?
Called Kharim Ntambi.
Yes. Kharim, you're still there. Kharim, yes. Now, the deportees are not criminals. And I'll tell you that one of the issues that was very clear when there was a discussion, the agreement that is made is very clear. It does not include criminals. In other words, the deportees are people who are not able to go back to their countries and therefore can be accepted elsewhere. And that's the principle of migration processing. If somebody leaves his or her country for some reasons, very justified reasons under international law, they are supposed to be screened and resettled or taken elsewhere. That's the principle, unless you don't know this. There are many refugees who have settled elsewhere, or they're kept somewhere until they can settle somewhere. So you are happy to live in this country and be settled in America, but you don't want other people to be settled in your country. It's really funny, because we just need to understand is that there are reasons, either persecution, political persecution, and etc., where you cannot feel safe anymore in your own country. And so you flee your country to be somewhere. And people who have wanted to settle maybe in America or in another country, Canada, and so on, and those countries are not willing to take them on. So do they float on the moon? No. under universal obligations of civilized countries, there has to be some way of taking on these people and giving them and affording them space to be able to live, to afford a good life, and therefore to be able to either survive and remain there, or can even look for ways and means of going somewhere else. That's just a matter of international legal obligations of civilized nations. And so this agreement was clear. There is a clause that rejects criminal record people. And I can tell you that details will come out, and you have to look at these agreements anyway. They'll be in the domain, to a public domain. And the immigration, our immigration citizen control directorate is responsible for ensuring that they, working together with the ESO, for example, and other intelligence agencies, Interpol, to be able to scrutinize these people, to find out their homes, their countries of origin, about their records and so on, and also records from this country they're coming from, like the US, and so on, to make sure that they are not criminals. And so this is the, of course, it is not classified. I mean, nobody has said it's classified. It is you who said you're looking for Google, you're Googling these agreements in the US. But I said it will definitely come into public domain, because it will be tabled in various levels of government. I believe it has to go through cabinet, it has to come to parliament at some stage, and so on, and they see what it is. So that's one. And the other issue, so don't mislead people and say they're criminals. They're not. There are people who are stranded in the border inside USA, and they're not being taken on. Yeah, there are those who are being deported because they were undocumented, but have not committed any crime. But those who are serving sentences, they're either in prisons in America or in some third country, maybe, as you know, in Central America and so on. Those are not the type of people who are coming here. These are the people who America cannot take them on, but they could be useful elsewhere. And they need to leave under international obligations, so that there are arrangements, instead of the US taking them on, over another country can do. Then they want to remain in power. Oh my God. We have been in power for 40 years, but there was no refugees. We're not accepting deportees, but we're in power. So we're not being in power because we're dictated by accepting refugees, deportees or not. It is about the electorates in this country who determine who goes into power and remains in power. It has nothing to do with accepting or not accepting deportees. No due process. Oh no, it's been a proper due process. There have been some engagements between the government of Uganda with the US over time on a number of things. Since they dropped the issue of AGOA, and since they narrowed down space in terms of relationship, they're becoming not just critical, but imposing, interfering, and other, instead of actually intervening, they're interfering with the internal affairs of the country. And so we had to narrow down space between us and Washington. And now there's a change of heart in Washington. They are seeing the potential vis-a-vis the loss of the space in terms of the volume of trade, in terms of diplomatic and IR relations with them, and they think that they must make a rapprochement with us as between Washington and Kampala. And so this has been on. We're not just negotiating for lifting sanctions against individuals. That's not of course, that's also part of it. We don't want our citizens to be encumbered in any way. We need to have a speaker who cannot travel freely. So yes, definitely it's part of it. But this is not to say that because they had sanctions, therefore the speaker is dying, or so. She's not. She's flourishing. She has countries she can go to, even if there are those she cannot go to. So yes, it is the responsibility of us to protect and defend our citizens, even if some of you are out there in the diaspora. So yes, it is. And these negotiations resulted into a broad content of understanding that includes trade. And trade, there are a number of lines of trade that are going to be played out for you to understand. And the issue of the tariffs, all those are going to play it out so that you can understand what they are. And of course, people are looking who do not wish us well, would say, why should Uganda even do that? Yes, we don't exist because there are three reasons why a state or a country can be able to be in place. One is to survive. That's very important. And the second one, it must grow. In other words, it must develop, it must grow. And the third one, it must be competitive. And for you to attain all those three, it means that you are capable of dealing with other nations in terms of trade, in terms of exchange, technology, and all that, so that you can survive, you can grow, and also you can be competitive. Facilities, yes, it is true. And one of the very senior officials in the country raised that. I'm sure that this is not going to happen instantly. There has to be some facilities for them, because we even our own, we're not taking them to prison, because remove that, because these are not refugees. There will be definitely facilities. And that is the standard measure across globally. If you're to take on people like this, there must be facilities for them. And I believe that that is going to be rolled out. They're not going to be settled in Bishenyi or taken to Namisi Ndua and in the village, and then they begin brushing shoulders. No. Or prison. That's the last thing you should ever think about. Then the issue of human rights ongoing. These are things that we're dealing with, and we've been dealing with them over time. The fact is that we have to differentiate between overzealous activism at the expense of stability and security of say, businesses and so on. You can, if you go to Nakivo Stadium and you shout your voice hoarse because you are condemning such an act or this and that, that's okay. But people are trampling over people's goods being sold in the markets and so on, burning up fuel stations and all these kind of things. That is what has to be stopped. And that's what we've been stopping. And I can tell you, no country does that. Look at what's happened in the US. Just at the neighborhoods where you are. The US is not accommodating that. And they have deployed even the National Guards. Yeah. So surely you cannot say there it is okay, but here it is wrong. If it is peaceful demonstration, that's okay. But if it is going to use tricks and also damaging and destroying property, then we lose our constitutional mandate of protecting people's lives and their properties. So I think it is a point of the limits as to which activism has to be done. And there are no documentation on deals. That's what I've answered. Refugees from Afghanistan, sure, I heard about it, my brother. I also heard about it, but I don't have any details about where they are and so on. And then you're also saying Secretary of State Marco Rubio used to be negative and now positive. You know, in politics, there are no permanent friends or permanent enemies. There are always permanent interests. If the interest of America was that at that time, what is it today? I just want to invite you to statecraft. You need to understand how statecraft plays out, and then you'll see, agree with the Marco Rubio, whether what he's doing is right or wrong. Because this is not about faith, as biblical or Quran that once Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam decreed this, it can never be changed. In politics, we don't have such permanent situations. And then investors. I didn't say that they're coming as investors. I said our policy is integrative policy. It's not that stringent, because if I'm an engineer, a professional engineer, and I'm a refugee in your country, and you don't want me to help in contributing to the well-being of that country, to the economic development of that country, using my skills, then definitely you're losing out. You're undermining my capabilities, but also you're losing out. So Uganda allows people who have their own aptitude to exercise them in a manner. And remember that these are not permanent people, settlers. Even if those deportees come to Uganda, they are not here permanently. they will always find a way of going to a third country as it will be processed and agreed between countries. So that is what you need to know. And finally, what is Uganda's interest? It is part of the deal. Survive, to grow, to be competitive. That's how we deal with between countries, the interstate deals and so on. But Madam, before I jump out, you had raised the issues of the law. And allow me to say something about it. Because people, we shouldn't be just being storytelling and vibes, which are irregular things. But we're not breaching any international law. This is between Uganda's, it is within the international legal regime that people can actually be moved. The authority to make treaties is vested in the president. And if you wish to know, Article 123 of Article 1 in our constitution delegates authority of making treaties to the president or his or her delegatee. And that is that is given. And so treaties, convention, agreement, and other arrangements are clear and categoric in that. And then they are ratified where necessary through a process. And we have Ratification Treaties Act, Chapter 204 of 98, and which allows all treaties to be ratified by cabinet, except those exception is given to armistices or neutrality or those related to peace, or those requiring a constitutional amendment. Those are the ones which can go to parliament. So so this deal was actually, and I want to repeat, a temporary administrative MOU arrangement. This is how you should categorize it. And it's stated clearly is a temporary administrative MOU arrangement. And the issue, so therefore, it does not require to go through all those details. What about our domestic law? Yes, our Citizenship and Immigration Control Act, and those who want to check is this Chapter 66. It governs permits and prohibits immigrants and authorized deportations orders and screening those who are coming into the country. And in terms of asylum and seeking, they also process asylum seekers to access and so on and so on. There is also the question of the non-refoulement in domestic law, which is related to the Refugees Act of 2006, and is very clear. So I think we are actually within the purview of the international and our domestic laws, and there is nothing in breach of that. I submit, Madam Moderator.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Honorable Simon, for the elaborate explanation. There were a couple of questions and statements in the chat room which you have responded to. Francis is saying, I don't understand the agreement Mulongo is talking about. It is also by international standards that an asylum seeker should remain in the first country of asylum. Okay, and you have been empowered due to NRM. All right. I don't know. I want us to move to another conversation, another topic. But do we have any comments so far? Miriam, Kharim, Francis.
Yes. Can I?
Okay, Kharim.
It's Mulongo. He came in to rebuke falsehoods, and I think he has made many. First of all, he said these people were refugees, and lastly, he's saying these people who are coming in are not going to be refugees, and they are going to be housed in differently. I don't know whether Uganda has such facilities, and like I asked, do we have a follow up on the 25 people that came in from Afghanistan? We don't. So we don't have a blueprint of flying in refugees into Uganda and hosting them. Two, he still says this is an agreement. This was just a conversation. There is no, and I can attest from today, we can come back to this conversation. I'll give him up to November that there will be no agreement on paper on hosting these refugees and how the program is going to operate. I think he's going off on vibes and what he thinks the government should agree on, but there is no such a thing as an agreement. By the time it becomes an agreement, I think two parties have agreed on a couple of things, and there is pen and paper. So for him to say it is still in cabinet, the president is still thinking about it. It is going to go to the cabinet, and then it will come into public domain. It means it hasn't even started. We cannot call an agreement of something that is still boiling in someone's head. By the time something becomes an agreement, it means that the two parties have agreed on certain tenets on how the agreement is going to move forward. Now, for him to say it hasn't yet come into public domain, the president is still thinking about it. It will come to cabinet, and after cabinet, it will come into public domain. If an agreement of such stature is going to be instituted, I think it would be prudent for Uganda to have the legislature, have an input. So when you say the president is going to do it with executive fiat, and say, this is the agreement that I'm having with the Secretary of State from the US, and this is how things are going to be. There was no discussion of AGOA. Even when you look at the statement that came out of Marco Rubio, there has not been any of that. If you look at the statements that have been coming out from the Minister of Foreign Affairs, none of the sort. So what the government of Uganda and the US have been talking about is just flying in people from the US to Uganda. We have no leverage whatsoever. And as I said, we can come back to this conversation in November, and there will be no paper that can attest to this agreement. Thank you so much.
Lynn, yes, Simon, point of correction, the people being deported. And I don't know where you have the confirmation that Uganda would receive non-criminals, because I'm going to give you an example. The guy who might be the first deportee to Uganda, called Kharim Abrego Garcia, is a criminal. He was rejected by his own country, and the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, have said he will probably be deported to Uganda after making that deal. So I don't know where you have the information that Uganda want to receive criminals, but this first guy on the plane is gonna be a criminal. So I don't know whether you're gonna reject him. I don't know the deal you are talking about, the details of that deal, because I haven't seen the documentation about that. And like Kharim said, nobody has said that Uganda will receive the non-criminal, quote unquote. So Uganda is gonna receive all these rejectees. So bear that in mind. So ideally, we should be having like a holding place for them. Maybe a prison facility, maybe like, I don't know how they handle such a people, but they are not investors. They are not clean citizens, coming to stay like you receive refugees from DRC or wherever, who are just looking for shelter and survival. But these are people who have a record, and a not very nice record, and they are being rejected for that reason. So that's what we are receiving. And let's bear that in mind. It needs some sort of facilitation to care for them, and whose budget is going to be touched for that purpose, because I don't think USA is giving out money to that effect. Because for them, they say that deporting such a criminals is to save. So I don't think they are putting a budget to that effect. If so, they are. I haven't seen anywhere they have sent money. And to go back on other countries which have received such a deportees, which is Sudan and Eswatini, the 9 people. Actually, the Marco Rubio, to quote him, he said the deplorable individuals have been deported. Sudan and Eswatini, meaning that to them they are the worst of the worst. So we can be humanitarian, but let's also think about the security of Ugandans here. And we know how vulnerable the Ugandan state structures are. So if you are bringing diehard criminals in the country, how are you protecting the Ugandans from these individuals. And what are they going to do? Are they going to start drug smuggling? Are they going to, I mean, if they are diehard, they are diehard, and some of them are part of the drug cartels. So I don't know how much deep into details we are discussing this. And like Kharim said, this is a deal that was entered into without maybe talking to the parliament, without giving a thorough, analysis as far as policy is concerned, how it's gonna be having a ripple effect on other structures. So as a government, I think that was careless. I know Museveni is desperate to enter deals with USA to protect his regime, but that was really careless.
Mulongo, as usual, tries sometimes to defend the indefensible. Because, truth be told, Mulongo, we are here on ground and we are seeing everything that works. When you say that the Interpol is involved, it will be able to check out the background and so on in collaboration maybe with Uganda. I don't agree with you. I can name where the Uganda security operatives, you have failed even to scrutinize something simple. So I don't think that somebody who has ever belonged to a gang, unless if you want to begin gangs in Uganda, and of which anyway, gangs are already mushrooming in Uganda. So if maybe you want to import more, then I would agree with you. And you are saying that the president has the power the constitution gives him. Yes, if the constitution gives the president power to execute some of those deals on behalf of Ugandans, they shouldn't be blind deals like this that have selfish interests that are not well thought of. Generally, that is misuse of the acts that you are quoting. And therefore, the president would be subjected to impeachment. That is a vote of no confidence. If you can agree with me that President Museveni is completely exhausted, sometimes he doesn't even know what is going on. So it is important for you to listen to some of these voices when we are telling you that this is going wrong. This is what needs to be done. And most of the things, like when you talk of you have to limit activism and you are talking of banning that we activists will ban fuel stations. Can you name a fuel station that has ever been banned by activists? Name just one, not two. Say fuel, a gas station that was on either this road, so and so, it was banned by activists. So when we are talking about these concerns, it's not that we don't love our country. We love our country. We also need it to be competitive. We have skills. Why can't you call back the skilled people from Uganda than asking that you will get skills from those who are being deported to a third country like Uganda through deals, because some of them are skilled and so on. Sincerely, we have to get serious if we are building a nation than just a matter of just defending a system which we know that is straying. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I believe it's a conversation we will see develop, and also we will definitely come back to have that conversation. But I want us to move away from that as we prepare for the general elections, as we gear for.
But Madam, I have to respond.
Okay, Simon, I'm giving you a minute to respond to that.
You cannot, because you gave those people so much to ask me. So if you give me a minute and you give them minutes, what does that mean? Of course, I'll try to do quickly, but then you should have restricted them to say in less than a minute so that I also take a minute. First of all, yes, the issue of refugees and the deportees. This is a matter of language. And for the US, they describe them as deported migrants or deportees. That means that these are the non-US citizens who have gone through removal proceedings under the Immigration and Nationality Act of the US. And that means they will have received a final order for being deported. So now, therefore, they are not recognized in the US as refugees or asylum seekers. But to us, they are deportees, but they are now seeking refuge. So you can play around with the words, but that's what it is. Now, what about the agreement? Yes, I told you about the MOU. for now, and the MOU is recognized under international law, and what you call an agreement, an agreement is an instrument between two states or even more, and it can be in any form, but it can be an agreement. I have participated in crafting some MOUs and under international law, and they move from there up to protocols. So it's a range of them, but definitely the starting point of MOU is one of those. And even our own country, our constitution agrees to defines our agreements, which can include conventions, agreements, or other arrangements, and that's well provided for. Criminals, I can tell you that the provisions, this is a formal document that has been crafted and endorsed for you, a doubting Thomas. It is there and it's been endorsed, and it is very clear, and it contains a clause of not including criminals or no individuals with criminal records. And also it includes other areas, not unaccompanied minors and so on and so forth. So then you said Museveni is desperate to protect his regime. He's not. I told you that we're entering 40-something years, but we're not desperate. When were we desperate? Is this the one going to make us remain in power? And who says we're going to be removed? It is the people of Uganda to remove us. And by voting us out, voting in somebody else. Just like we have some people losing seats in parliament and so on, and LOCs and so on. But not because of signing an agreement with another power. That's not the case. We're doing it for humanity. We're doing it because we have a policy in place that accommodates this. We're doing it because the NRM has its convictions in this, not just nationally, but internationally. And that's what is making us. Now, Francis, Interpose, we felt scrutinized. There could be operational failures like anywhere else. But definitely we have kept Uganda secure because we're alert and we operate across the globe, across the region. We know what's happening everywhere, and we know what's happening as much as we need to secure this country. And then you say that even Museveni has powers to enter treaties, he's doing it against Uganda's will. Whose will? If you vote in the president, you entrust him in accordance with the law. The law has been used to empower the president under the constitution and other attendant laws to do the things on behalf of Ugandans. So which kind of Ugandan are you to say it's against your will? I mean, you already entrusted him under the law as he started his regime, and finally you're saying that banning fuel stations. Of course, there have been a lot of stuff that has been done to burn down properties elsewhere. There are so many reports. You need to look at that. There are many reports that wash in newspapers and so on, where activists have burnt down properties and destroyed properties here and there. The issues, I agree with opposition. I agree with activism because they're expressing their anger, their resentment, their rejection. They need to express that. But the mode of expressing that is what I'm talking about. You should not do so at the expense of other people's lives and other people's properties. You remember when there was that uprising in Kampala and many people were killed by those activists. You remember very well. So really, that was not necessary. But speaking your mind, I would also defend you against any irregular reaction from government agencies if you did so peacefully, if you did so within the law. So mine is the excesses. And so like what's happened in Kenya where they bring the government programs on the knees, that is not necessary at all. It is wrong and it must be rejected. So anyway, I think we're just disagreeing on the mode. But otherwise, to oppose the government, that's your right. You can oppose it. Thank you,
Right. Right. Thank you so much. We will. I believe it's a developing story that we will all look out for and see how it goes. I want us to dive in briefly in the state of political parties in the country. We saw earlier on in July that opposition parties sought joint candidates against Museveni, and this is where we saw that several opposition parties came together to see if they can front a joint presidential candidate. We know that in the run up to 2021 general elections, similar attempts were made towards same for the same fight to front a single candidate for all opposition parties from president to the lowest level, but we know how that went. So we are seeing that the DP, the Democratic Front, I beg your pardon, led by Nyendo Mukungwa legislator Mathias Mpuga, brought together Social Democratic Party of Mike Mawike and People's Development Party of Abed Bwanika, was sanctioned in Rubaga, Kampala, while the People's Front for Freedom and Alliance for National Transformation signed an MOU with both wings strategizing on having a joint candidate ahead of the 2026 general elections, and it would be foolish for any political entity to go into the upcoming elections alone and expect to approach Mr. Museveni. And this was said by one of the commentators. The question here is this a possibility? Is this a dream? Because we have seen this happen before. We are seeing it happen now. We don't know where it is headed. I want to begin with you, Miriam.
I think that the political coalitions are really the best way forward given the political environment in Uganda. We know they are kind of fragmented. They are not strong individually. Some are strong, but they are better forming a coalition than dividing the small vote they have. And surprisingly, I think apart from a few Ugandans, but generally, if you really take deep inside, it's like there is no there is no big difference between our political parties as far as ideology is concerned. Of course, NRM is totally different from everybody, but when you look at the objectives of NUP, FDC, PFF, I think the biggest difference is about the leadership, but policy-wise, ideological, I think they all have a kind of a similar agenda, not very similar, but kind of related, that they can easily form a coalition towards a purpose, a goal, and revert to their individual parties after that project is achieved, which include elections and all that. And but right now, I kind of feel like they are running out of time. If they are to form a coalition, if they are to make an alliance, how much time do they have to really unite and move forward? Of course, there is time, but until they really working against themselves by delaying any progress towards the effect. Because if we don't know the candidate by now, if we don't have a specific group by now, how are you going to compete against NRM, which started campaigns 2 years ago? I mean, I think opposition, we have Kharim here and Francis, they can update us more because they belong to it. They are leaders in different parties. But I think by this time we should be far on that effect. And then again, Kharim, this goes to you. Nope. I see other groups uniting and forming an alliance, but will nope form an alliance and agree on a joint candidate with other political parties.
Mm-hmm. Interesting that you ask, because during all these parties that were meeting, it is reported that President Robert Chagulanyi, the National Unity Platform president, was invited for the same function where ANT and PPF was meeting. PFF, I beg your pardon, PFF was meeting, and he was a no-show. Apparently was holding a separate event at his party headquarters in Kavule. So I like that you asked the same question, and I wanted to pose the same to Kharim and emphasize the fact that really, if NUP can NUP really sit down with other parties and front a joint candidate?
Yes, thank you so much, Lynn. Yeah, I believe there has been, and there is still an ongoing conversation between opposition parties' principles to find a joint candidate at different levels. That conversation is ongoing. I understand you said that the last time the principals met, the NUP president was not available, but I think it was because there had been a prior event that had been organized at the headquarters. That does not mean that the conversations are not going on behind the scenes. Those conversations are still going on. We have worked closely with our friends from the Alliance for National Transformation. We have also worked closely with the PPF. So I believe the conversation is still going on, and I would be hesitant to make any possible pronouncements right now. It will be a little bit premature, but I believe in time the principals will come out and announce how the coalitions will work. But I can confirm to you that the conversations are going on behind the scenes.
Okay, interesting. Francis, what say you? Really, is this a possibility? Apparently, one of the NUP members said that it's never too late for a coalition to happen. So I don't know. Is that possible? Is that true? And does it stand any chances against the NRM?
First of all, you are aware that the environment or the terrain, the political terrain, where political parties are operating back home in Uganda is not all that leveled. So there are so many obstacles and so on, but we always have to see how we work around them and achieve the objective that we want to achieve. So then secondly is yes, it's not that what you are seeing that it's something that has started today. That is one of the outcomes of what has been happening over the years, or over some good period of time, like listening to the public, what they are saying, and then as the leadership saying, okay, what needs to be done. And conversations have been taking place, only that some of the conversations they have not been coming in the media and so on, but they have been taking place. And again, like to agree and say, okay, how do we increase our presentation? How do we bring cohesion into our policy packages that we are going to sell to the public? And most importantly, like to see, all of us, different political parties, we have different approaches and ideologies of how we want Uganda to be. So aligning that, it also takes time. But for us at majority level, like we already agreed, and then it's up now to the leaders. That's why now it is at a higher level for the leaders to discuss and come up with one strong stand, and it will be brought to public. The journalists and whoever wants to know the opposition, because those are like-minded, would not front a candidate there. So I still believe that it's not too late. We are still on the right trajectory, and I hope leaders can very quickly come with a solid agreement and candidate, and then we move on, because we know that the person we are trying to dislodge has all the apparatuses of government and misuses them. So we don't take him for granted. We know, and we don't underestimate him. We know what he is capable of doing, as far as even unleashing terror on citizens in the political mileage. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you, Francis. I come to you, Honorable Simon, if you're still with us. And that is intentional. But the question is, when we look at the history of multi-party politics in Uganda, we have seen that even if the opposition fronted any strong candidates, even if they all rallied together, they have totally failed to fight or to really front a formidable fight against the NRM. Is there a strategy the NRM has employed against the opposition intentionally in the law, in operations, or is it that we really have a bad opposition?
No, I think that's quite a terrible question, ma'am. But in political contest, there are always games, strategies, and tactics employed by either side. And he who has more smarter tactics and strategies would definitely win. You may find somebody who is very clean, very nice, losing an election. And what you call a bad one wins the election. And the whole trouble of so-called democracy, as we know it from the West, it can be so ugly. That's the ugly side of it. The tyranny of numbers, where they want somebody with the majority of numbers becomes tyrannical in a way in the political game plan. And that's what the West wants. And that's what you people subscribe to. And unless we change that, we're bound to go by what it is today. And I would like to use that to also make my points. One is that I'm not sure, my colleagues have not mentioned it, but I remember that in the recent discussion in Parliament about amendment of Political Parties and Organizations Act, which did not formally recognize coalitions. And I remember attempts to amend Section 18 in this year sparked a lot of drama in Parliament. And any coalition seems to remain extra legal and vulnerable, therefore, to legal or judicial challenges, in my view. But we can check that so that to make sure that I'm right. To me, the other problem is the weak party institutionalization. Most of our parties, I think about 26 of them now, they are re-registered, are mostly personalistic vehicles, whether it is Snoop with the Honorable Chagulanyi, FDC with the vestiges at the top, and so on. There is this atomized pluralism, which fosters short-lived alliances. The collapse of the Democratic Alliance, for example, in 2015, the United Forces of Change, demonstrates how thin party structures cannot enforce binding deals, for example. I also see issues of elite rivalries and spoiler incentives, disagreements that reflect national calculus, not just egos. Smaller parties have often played spoilers, damaging concessions or threatening defection, like it happened in 2016. We had our colleague, the Right Honorable Mbabazi, coalition bid faltered after parties defected under pressure. So similarly, just recently, 2021's efforts to rally behind Bobi Wine failed, and some elites were co-opted by the state on the other side. So you can see issues of elite rivalry and spoiler incentives. Comparative lessons, you have said them. I can go to our neighborhood in Kenya, like my sister Miriam has said, that those who have been able to collapse and rebuild and therefore succeed electorally and so on. But in our case, as you ask a fundamental question, what has gone wrong? I think that to me, our biggest problem is that we're personalistic vehicles, we're not institutions. That's one major thing. In other words, our organizations or political parties are more like private political taxis, where each branded around a single driver and so on and so forth. Then you have fragmented, easily co-opted, distrustful members who play zero-sum games, spoiler politics, and that's what is happening here. And then you end up in a coalition talks which you don't even yield. The third one to me is the strategically inept parties. Our parties have not developed ribs, so to say, or the backbone to be able to withstand the might of NRM. They need to do that, and you do that by building a social base in terms of grassroots, and then build structures that can withstand. Of course, Francis is going to jump in and say, but you have not even allowed us. Yes, all those notwithstanding, you could even be as correct and as holy. But this is a fact. As long as you don't have a strong social base There is no, you can now put up a fight. Then, in contrast with the incumbent, of course, the NRM has remained very strong, deeply entrenched in security bureaucracy and entrenched in the population. If you look at our election, all villages over 70,000 have strong NRM structures. That is a very strong, momentous thing that you cannot compare to say they can fight. Now, if I'm to be brutal, madam, as I conclude, our opposition parties are personalistic, they're fragile, and strategically short-sighted cliques. They're cliques because even going into opposition is for certain calculus, not because they have conviction philosophically and politically, and that they have an agenda that can stand against the current agenda of NRM. They don't seem to have that. They don't even offer clear alternative policy programs to say they're going to sway the mindset. They hide behind the tribes and hide behind religions. And that tells you how myopic or short-sighted we may be. So if you want something credible, then we must do what I said. Build credible structures, build clear alternative, convincing programs and policies. And that's when you can make an impact.
All right. Very lethal indeed. I believe Francis is itching to say something. Oh, Kharim. Hello, Kharim. Yes.
Let me come in as they prepare their rebuttals. Simon, you can't being part of NRM, you are the one strangling parties. You can't be the killer and start condemning the parties for being, not well organized as they should be. Recently, even up to now, nobody in opposition is allowed to hold any gathering or whatever. I saw no officials being arrested in Imbarara, everywhere. They still can't go anywhere and campaign. They can't go anywhere to mobilize. It's like chaining someone on the pole and telling and taunting them to go run if they can. I think NRM, we should be ashamed at this stage. I know it's about power, it's competition, but let it be fair competition. Don't you think that Ugandans will still appreciate NRM if it was playing fairly? Maybe not. Maybe that's why you are scared of fair competition. And even these elections, we don't even know if we are going to have free and fair elections, given the examples of what elections have been since NRM. I mean, I can say since when rigging started. Even up to now, I think we need to commend opposition members for being so brave to even dare contest against NRM, even when they know they're going to be tortured, when they know their members are going to be brutally maimed or even killed in the process. They still stand up, and that's very commendable. And they have kept their flags flying high for Uganda. Every government needs checks and balances, and that's the purpose of having opposition. But if you even frustrate the opposition forces, I don't know what your intention is as NRM. Are you trying to tell the world that you want to be like the supreme dictator? I mean, Idi Amin was a dictator, but that type. And if it's that type, let's just do away with politics and do away with opposition parties, multi-partyism or whatever, and have a constitution or dictatorship or monarchy or whatever it is, and forget about elections. But if we must have elections, let's give people a chance to have a choice. We can't push opposition parties to come up with an agenda, because agenda should be got from the people. Have they even got a chance to go out and mobilize people and listen from their views to form, an informed party platform or manifesto or whatever? No, we don't give them a chance. But even with such a constraining environment, they still come out, they deliver. And I really want to commend opposition parties, opposition members, even those who come out as independent, for being so brave to uphold the democratic flag of Uganda despite the circumstances.
Right. Thank you, Miriam. But I can only imagine that, not just imagine, but I don't think I've seen a competition or a contestation that people don't want to win. I mean, everybody wants to win. So the winner gets it all, I think. Francis, what say you?
Inclined, yes, it is his duty to defend all the horrors that his political party government does without any sense of number one, he said, I will begin with, and definitely I will begin with it. Mulongo, you cannot say a country is democratic and then you freeze big space, or you don't allow that every citizen has the right to exercise and choose whom they want. And then you come and brag that NRM is a mass party. It exists in all this 72,000 villages in the country. That is what I told you, that you exist there because of terrorism. And last time whenever I told you that NRM is a terrorism party, you are refused. But this is what I meant. When we say terrorism, it is the use of threat, violence, either by non-state or state actors against civilians to achieve political, ideological, or social goals, which the NRM has been doing. When you beat up people, when you imprison people without trial, when you go and attack them even when they are at their own political party offices, that is terrorism. So there is no any other definition apart from calling it terrorists. And therefore, let me, when you say our parties are myopic, let me try to educate you a little bit about the ANT. Like, for example, ANT, one of the aspirations that we look up to is an inclusive economy where every citizen has the right to participate in the economy of our country. And that will lead to, of course, if everybody participates freely in the economy without being destabilized, then we will have a country that works for everyone. Displacement of land is done by NRM. I can name thousands and millions of people who have been displaced, not by any other person apart from operatives of NRM government. So you can't tell me that you are building an inclusive country and a country that will work for everyone. For your own information, for us, we have a philosophy as ANT that if we have inclusion, transformation, diversity, and values and services, then we have our natural resources that are well planned, then our country would be even running better, that we don't even need foreign aid. So it's not that we are just myopic. No, that's not true. Generally, it is NRM that is myopic and desperate, to the extent that you kill to retain power. You will tell me that all governments kill, but yours, it's beyond what we can expect. Get it from us that if it was not that you are freezing the civic space, for example, why would you go and attack the headquarters of, I'm not a spokesperson of NUP, but the headquarters of NUP? Why? It's because you know what they can provide on table. You are calling it politics of, I don't know, populism and so on. No. You yourself, you have said that in politics, you have to learn how to play it. So if for us, we have known that going to reach out to the people, talking to the people, or telling them what our manifesto and aspirations are, or giving them a hint on how a government should be run, and then you are sitting on us, you are suffocating us, and then you come and you begin brag. If we go by the Constitution, let's go back to the Constitution. If we go by the Constitution, NRM would be history. But because time and again, you keep abrogating, abusing the Constitution, and doing all sorts of evil. But Mulongo, and by the way, even if it was not for the manifestos and the ideas that the opposition bring forth, your government would not be running. You have nothing to offer, for sure, of substance. But you reign on what the opposition presents. And maybe that's why sometimes some of these things we have started like keeping them in silence, so that you first make as many mistakes as you can for the public to realize. But otherwise, we are not myopic. We know what we are doing, and given the opportunity, like as I have always said, the NRM, you have the clock, but we have the time. Mulongo, you like it or not, at one point, I know we shall get into power where you have already created a mess that shall take us a lot to clean. But believe me, at one time, you'll be off, because we are also organizing and we reach the ground in our own ways. But if we are given a fair ground, like how you guys do, as mandated by the constitution, not your government anyway, would be a step more ahead. And that is what you are always afraid of. That's what your government is afraid of. That's what Museveni is afraid of.
All right, thank you, Francis. Kharim, do you have anything to say, to add? Yep.
Yes, I would like to pick up from where Mr. Kamuhanda stopped on myopia. to pick from Simon's words, calling political parties myopia and very individualistic. I mean, it's quite unfortunate for a person speaking for a political party that has had one political leader that hasn't even trusted that any other person can lead the NRM, to say that these opposition political parties are individualistic about who is at the top. But the NRM hasn't exercised that in 40 years. We are talking about a party that is pushing people in wheelchairs to run, who are really old, who can no longer, whose faculties are unfortunately faculties of reasoning are unfortunately deteriorating because of age. But the party of inclusiveness and the party of whatever he has been saying hasn't seen that. I think that would be the definition of myopic. And when it comes to structures, I'm afraid that Mr. Simon thinks that using government apparatus to using the government apparatus to patronize the people, it means you're building coalitions. I mean, at the end of that, by the end of the next elections, I think we are going to even have RDCs or at local councils, because that's how far the government thinks that their structures are. You cannot differentiate between the state apparatus and the NRM party. So for them to think that they have been successful because they have mobilized, they have organized, yet they are using the state apparatus to coerce and brutalize and entrench on the people of Uganda. It's quite unfortunate. It's quite unfortunate, and I think for him to believe that the NRM would be as strong as he says it would if Museveni was away, it would be also myopic, because the party is not based on ideology. It is based on giving people freebies, throwing people money, actually stealing from the coffers of the public, and using those resources to patronize and buy out candidates from the local levels. Um, it is based on corruption. Oh my God! Like, I mean, the list can go on how the NRM has managed to stay in power for 40 years, but that doesn't mean it excludes being democratic. It excludes being inclusive. It excludes, but it involves all evils that dictatorial and authoritarian regimes use to stay in power. So you wouldn't differentiate any authoritarian government from Uganda. There is no difference. It's just a copy and paste. So I think that's the ultimate definition of myopia.
Thank you, Kharim. I'm sure, Simon, you have something to say as we come to the conclusion of this conversation. I'll take your comments and then we'll call it a day.
Thank you, ma'am. I think you you've done well. We've done well because we are giving some surgical analysis about our political party performance in the country. I don't regret my description. I'm just an analyst, as a scholar like you are, as an analyst as I am. I'm just trying to provide my scholar analytics about the opposition, and I'm not sorry about it. What I'm saying that if they want to make a difference, they need to look at those things I'm talking about, and they need to change them. Then the issue of alternative policies, yes, I'm also firm about it. The things he's mentioning about inclusive economics, some of those are not quantified. What does it mean, inclusive economics? Even now we're practicing inclusive economics. People grow coffee, people are trading, people are investing, and that's what makes the backbone of economy. So what kind of inclusive economics are you going to bring from? Describe it. Tell us, is it from Russia? Is it from, what kind of model is it? So that we know that it's alternative. Alternative means it's optionally different from the other. The issue of land grabbing, well, the issue of demand for land is serious. Yes, it is true that some people have grabbed land, and anything criminal, it doesn't matter whether you are for NRM or you are for opposition party, as long as you breach the law, you can't have to be dealt with. And we have laws. We have any land tribunals, we have even land divisions in our judicial systems, and people do take their cases up and win or sometimes lose. You know the intricacies of law. But otherwise, we have mechanisms in place to deal with the illegal land acquisition in the country. But I admit that it is there, and it's also everywhere else as population grows. NRM are terrorists? Never. That one can be described on those who terrorize, and terrorism has clear definition under scholarly definitions and also under the law. NRM cannot fit in any of those. And as I said, it is a cause and effect issue. If the opposition are peaceful, then they will be treated peacefully. But if they want to, sorry, ma'am, my network was unstable. Yeah, if they want to play antics that of violence nature, then violence becomes violence. Yes. So to me, it is not right to blame it only on one party. You don't just wake up and be violent. It doesn't happen. And then the issue of attack on headquarters, all those are illegal matters. Law and order matters, which police has explained itself. They have stated the reasons why they did so, and so on. Abusing and changing the constitution to keep in power. The constitution is made, and it's a living document. And just like anywhere in the world, whether in South Africa, in the US, in Canada, in Nigeria, or even Egypt, as long as there is need at a given time that requires to be adjusted to, we will always have amendments. If you look at the American Constitution, has gone through a number of amendments, and so on. So at any one given time T, I was part of the constitution making in 1994-95, and we laid in place certain basics. But that was what we saw things as it were from a history to that time. But now, if the government and the people feel like making changes and they want to do so, as long as they go through a due process and use that process correctly and through the parliament, who are those empowered by the population to make those changes on their behalf, unless the entrenched clause that requires a plebiscite or a referendum. But as long as it requires parliament, then it does so. So the question is, were the amendments done legally and correctly or not? That should be the question. And then NRM reigns on what opposition provides. I'm not sure about that. You'll have to give me examples. And when you get into power, will have made a mess. Well, changes always come. Of course, we wish you luck, just like you wished us luck at a given time, maybe your parents or yourself. Changes will always come. And nobody says we can be in power forever. We can't. Time is going to come, we shall leave. But we shall fight to make sure we don't leave power, because when you capture power, you keep it. How do you keep it? Doing those things that are good for the electorates and doing those things that will maintain your power. That we have seen governments fall. Obote's government not last. Benaisa's was a few months. Lule was a month. You know, it depends on how you keep power. You must keep it in a manner that is legal, but also in a manner that makes you capable of maintaining it. I've seen some of your political parties have not kept power. You keep breaking up each time and then you break up. So if you cannot keep that power in opposition, how will you keep it in power? And my brother Kharim, yes, you're not myopic. I'm very serious. If you are very forward-looking, you should be able to see things strategically and plan, foresee, and also avoid certain things. But the mistakes that happen in the opposition parties, they are yet to convince me that they're not myopic. We don't like the word. I also don't like it, but I'm just describing. And then how come we have only one leader? It's our choice. It's our choice. And the president goes through processes. One, now he has to go through this Nambole, what we've been calling Nambole now in Kololo. We have done that year in, year out for a long time now, since 2000. And so we do that. We have a delegates conference. And he goes through it. And when it comes to general elections, the gentleman has to campaign. I see him growing thin, even changing color. It's not a joke, because opposition sometimes put up a very strong fight. And he has to survive if he has to win and therefore go through. Then why claim organize and mobilize when they use state resources? When you vote a party into power, you take charge of resources of the government. The minister, it will be that of party. The president will be that party. So, of course, there is delineation between purely party activities and running the government as the party in power. So, yes, you have an advantage once you get in power. Like in the elections recent in America, President Trump came in from the opposition, but he was running against the tide because the Democrats were the ones in power. So, but he had to do everything necessary to win. So it is not impossible to win. Even if you have advantage of the state resources, you can still lose as long as those who are coming in demonstrate better alternative. And finally, you're saying that as long as you're in power, evil, dictatorial antics, all those are cries of, I don't want to say a loser because you will say Mulongo is speaking badly. When you lose, sometimes you cry in a manner that's not controlled. What do you mean by those now? Surely, I don't want to go one by one. Evil. What is evil and what is holy? Unless you're going back to the Holy Roman Empire and the other one, and evil. We're Christians. We're religious. We're Muslims. And we don't act for evil things. We even swear by the Quran, and we affirm by the Quran and swear by the Bible. We don't do that. And what you call dictatorial is because you are not just winning. So you're desperate. You have not won, so you begin using those adjectives. The fact is that what we're doing is legal, is within the Constitution, and once we breach those, we're challenged. And please challenge us on point to point than using these heavy-loaded terms like evil and so on. Maybe you're coming in cassocks of a priest, I don't know. But for us, we're human beings. We're doing what is necessary as human beings.
All right. Okay. Fantastic. Unless there's one more comment, I would love to call this to an end. Francis, you good?
Fair to say that they normally win. They normally rig elections through electoral violence. They met electoral violence to it's not that they win plainly. No. That's a record that should be corrected, saying that they win legally. NRM has never won legally. It is through violence and so on. Generally, the recent concluded primary elections of your own party even demonstrated it further. And that's why I'm saying you have degenerated into gangs. You saw how the people of one party, another one was bringing a force, another one brings a counter force. Mulongo, you are doing a disservice to Uganda. By the time you leave, there will be gangs in our country.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. I see Francis here says NRM is personalized to M7. Without him, there's no NRM. It survives on public resources. Kharim says alternative is Pinetti. Wow. 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 Lethal. All right. Thank you guys for making time.
Hey, but mom, he said, let's be on record. I also have put on record. I want to put on record that the NRM has been winning elections fairly and correctly, and those who have felt that we have not won correctly and fairly have taken it up either in courts of law or challenged us in other ways. And even if it went to the Supreme Court, they have defeated them. And that it should be on record that that was laid to rest by the Supreme Court of our country. And yes, the courts, yes, courts of law. We have faith in those courts. If you don't, then why do you take us there? And then the issue of alternative policies, I wish him luck. Should expound, not use some loaded words which don't have any meaning to what we're discussing. So, Madam, I want to thank you myself that the NRM is here because of the people of Uganda. Don't fight us. You go and fight the people of Uganda who put us where we are. Also fight them for not voting for you. I have every sympathy, but it's beyond me. Thank you very much.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, Francis. Here he says constitutional changes that are done to benefit individuals are self-centered and do not serve the citizenry. Thank you, Honorable Simon. Thank you, Miriam. And thank you very much, Kharim, all for making time. We'll catch you again next time. We'll have more conversation on issues, Uganda diaspora, and how best we can better our country. For God and my country, it remains. See you next time.
Amen.